is going to speak to us in regards the draft submission on National Adaptation Plan, the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Tracker and Suburban Regeneration Biannual Report. Welcome, Don. You've been here before, so that you know that you've got the 10 minutes to talk to us on these today, and I see you've got a slide.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, members. We'll try and make this a little bit shorter because, ironically, I'm talking about priorities mainly this morning, so I should speed this up and get going. The question really is simply, how did we get here? It's just simple. There's too much on the agenda, taking elected members time away from core business. Nothing gets done properly. Too much is glossed over, and the council's internal resources are spread too thinly with too much noise. My main concern today is the solutions. Push the noise off your agenda. Please focus. Please allocate more resources to what is left, the important matters. There will always be a paper from Wellington, a program that we could do better, a policy that we could be reviewing. Item 7, papers from Wellington are for general public to engage in my opinion, directly. Please leave it to the members of the public to make their own submissions if they choose. If they are unhappy with government policy, then there is an election. It is not the job of council to be the opposition. Government actually has an opposition, and too often council is undermining that process. Item 9, the dashboard supporting material really looks like the work of the Ministry for the Environment. Like social housing, also on the agenda, this appears to be a response to poor government policy delivery or simply a bunch of locals who want to swim in the same pool without being in Wellington. Item 12, reports come up for a review all the time. As governance, it's your role to push them off and have structures reviewed. I understand the Local Government Act may present requirements. At some point, we must test that when the demands are overwhelming us. We ended up with the chlorine in the water because we didn't push back. We didn't test, we didn't refuse, we didn't go to court. We are simply outgunned by Wellington, and they are now dossing us. You can read the quote for yourselves. The army of individuals processing the papers on the table could have been out on Friday where Stephen McPake was, on Monday tracking down hundreds of Prezi cards. The army could have been helping out staff who are currently overwhelmed. The solutions. Push the noise off your agenda. Please focus. Please allocate more resources to what is left, the important matters. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from elected members? Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Just with the chlorine piece, that was going to happen whether we moved on it or not, but at the time I personally just thought it was better to work with the District Health Board because they were also silent on it, that side of things. So my thinking at the time was to work with the District Health Board, and hopefully in the future they would support what we're doing with our water when we wanted to get rid of it, and perhaps central government didn't. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, I disagree with your position, Tim, and I think you made the wrong decision at the time, and I was quite vocal about that at the time. I think that you should have, as a council, directly challenged the position of the government in the High Court and brought in some other governance. What we've actually seen is government policy run amok, and an initial commitment by this council to only authorise the chlorine in the water for 12 months has significantly overrun. We let them out the gate, assuming that we would be able to rein them back in for a situation that may unfold. It did unfold in Havelock North. It may have unfolded down here, was the argument. There was lots of pushback from the community stating that that would not be the case because of the way our infrastructure works compared with other bodies.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think it would have happened here.
Hang on.
But what
I'm just aware that there's lots of questions, so we might just take a quick one from each person rather than in depth. Anne and then Pauline.
Yeah, kia ora. Hi, Don.
Good morning, Anne.
This morning you will have seen the variety of things that people have come to speak to us about. we've had food waste, and we've had a film about our wonderful Hickley Park. We've had concerns about becoming smoke-free. So you have asked the question, or made the statement, that what is our core business? What is our core business? What is your view about our core business as elected members?
Well, and I certainly made that clear in 2018 when I first presented here on core business. I handed out a bunch of goodie bags and a bit of fun and made a bit of a joke of it, because at the time my sewer system was damaged, and that was keeping me awake for a quarter of an hour every 2 hours through the middle of the night and clearly affecting my mental health. It became evident, I think, to most members following me on social media at that time that I was questionably quite unwell. I've stepped up this time because I see an entire community of 90,000 people or more who are becoming unwell. Our core business is around supporting council assets in the first instance, the stuff that nobody else does. Wellington is currently threatening to come in and take over our water infrastructure. That's a threat, but it's not here doing it. And at this time, we have to be actually looking after those assets. This is also, you're right, that film we just watched a moment ago was absolutely stunning. There's no question. I don't think anyone would disagree with me that film was stunning. But I've also got members of the community just messaging me saying, why is this on the agenda? Why have these people been given 5 minutes? And given that they're not sleeping through the night, they're becoming unwell like I was, they are frustrated and their houses stink, I can kind of understand their question.
Okay, so we'll move to Pauline.
Oh, thanks. I'm just going back to the chlorine in the water that Tim alluded to, that we do have difficult decisions to make, particularly around spending ratepayer money and particularly around ensuring that the safety of our residents. So would you prefer that council spent ratepayer money on taking the government to court or improving our drinking water infrastructure to meet the new standards which were not apparent at the time of the chlorine?
Ironically, we have to do a bit of both. We actually do have to realistically address a bit of both. The reality is that our infrastructure, like Havelock North's, was not at an acceptable level for a 21st century country, for a first world 21st century country. But at the same time, the government has run around racking up the community with a lot of engagements, such as $6 million, I believe, spent on a cartoon advertising campaign, which has been widely criticised, including by the Broadcasting Standards Authority, ironically.
But our money, spending your money, would you rather we spent it on taking the government to court?
Yes, some of that I do, because that's bringing in a bigger bat to give a bit of a pushback, and bringing in, rather than our staff who are not lawyers, well, some of them are, but bringing in some high-quality legal representation. We've got 405,000 people in the city, Pauline, so the amount of money that would need to be spent on that is not huge in the big scale of things, and perhaps it would slow down the onslaught of government pushing into our space that's just pushing too much noise on our agenda. Some of the water stuff that you folk have considered around the table in the last wee while about Three Waters has taken our focus away from an actual disaster that's unfolded in the eastern suburbs and become embarrassing.
Fair call.
So, thanks, Pauline. Talking about disasters and future disasters and pushing back on government, all things you've addressed there. Are you aware of the content of the government's National Adaptation Plan and the onus it's going to put on councils and communities?
No, I haven't got a single clue about it. I didn't even know it existed until I saw it in the agenda today, Sarah. So
Yep.
Through the chair, I might add that that is a failing by central government to actually effectively create awareness of its own plans and policies, and to actually engage with the community effectively. What they've done, by the looks of it, is come to your table and ask you folk to engage with it, and then in turn asked if you wouldn't mind seeing if I might like to have a say on that particular issue. And I find that unacceptable. They should be directly, through my local MP, engaging with me and the opposition parties engaging with me and saying, hey Don, get in behind this and start having a voice to say on it, rather than taking staff time in this building away from the disaster that we actually have unfolding that's affecting people's sleep and well-being today.
So just so you know that the draft submission on the National Adaptation Plan is doing what you asked for earlier and pushing back on something that government is looking to impose on councils in some ways that are helpful and some not. But your point around us focusing on the current issues about the wastewater is a really valid one, and one that is addressed at every council meeting currently. But I'd like to ask Jane Davis to address that, because you've raised an issue that if we weren't, for example, having this meeting, and if someone hadn't written a submission on the National Adaptation Plan, would the outcomes be better for that community currently? And
Sorry, he
whether the
raised a number
resourcing
of
is
other
there.
items.
So I've asked staff to provide some advice on that.
Thanks, Sarah. No, from my perspective, releasing staff doing some other work would not have sped up anything that we're doing with the wastewater plant recovery and engagement with the community. So we've partnered with 4 agencies to help us roll out the support package. That's going really well. We've had over $85,000 worth of support already issued this week. We have had a bit of an issue with the Prezi card availability, so having more staff available wouldn't have made the Prezi cards turn up any quicker. So from my perspective, the team is doing a great job. We've got the resources that we need to respond.
And when were these reports written? When do they get signed off by ELT, and sort of how long has this process been to get them here?
Yeah, I can't speak for all of those, but I know that some of them have had quite tight time turnaround, so certainly the adaptation plan response has been quite quick, but some of them have been reflect work that's been going on for months and months as well.
Yeah.
So preparing those reports doesn't take up that much time of staff time. The work that goes underneath it that we're reporting on is ongoing work that our staff are doing and are continuing to do and have done for months.
Thank you. I will draw that deputation to a close now. Thanks for raising those issues, Don. I think that prioritising work is a key thing that needs to happen within council, both for the volume of work that comes across councillors' desks, but also making sure that we get the right things in the oversight piece, so that we can make sure the right stuff is happening. And that gets divvied up between the committees and to council. And after next week, everything will be going through the council meetings, because the committees will be disestablished. So everything will go through that forum. But thank you for bringing that to us. And I'm sure that we'll see you again.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is Joanna Gould, who is going to speak to us in regards to item 10, South Library, Te Kete Wananga o Waimokihi, earthquake repair option.
No. I might kick you under the table to tell you what's wrong with things. Good morning. According to this article, Shirley Library is the second busiest suburban library, Fenderton's the first, and South is the second. South Library includes a traditional library, service centre, boardroom, meeting rooms, learning centre and cafe. Shirley Library is also considered a suburban library, and the green box is actually the library space, and the blue box is the service centre, New Zealand Post and the Coastal Burwood governance team. The revision youth audit has already highlighted the issues with the current Shirley Library. And Christchurch Libraries, this is what we do, why we do it, and our functions and services. The asset management plan summary on the libraries shows the key activity centres, and Shirley Library Shirley is also considered a key activity centre, but it's not included it should be included because of the population in this area and the growth in this area. These are the replacement costs for the South Library and the Shirley Library. We already know on budget that's more for the South Library, and the Shirley Library is less than what is on budget currently. Here are the two libraries. Shirley was built in 1995. South was built in 2003. The capacity for Shirley is 3 times less than the capacity for South, yet we have a population density of 2,300 per kilometre square. This is the facilities rebuild plan. Shirley Community Centre and Shirley Library were both on this plan, the original plan, and there's nothing about South Library in this original document. The engineering reports, there's the one for South and the one for Shirley, and because of the age of the Shirley Library, there's concerns about the building type and the loads in an earthquake, so there's still issues from what I can read in these reports. This is the report that's on the table later on today. There's information about functionality. South don't have an issue with the size of their facility, just the layout, whereas Shirley already has said repeatedly through the youth and through the community that we don't have enough. And this is the Community Wellbeing Act, and it's supposed to help with socio-economic, environmental and cultural. These are the photos that I've already shown you previously. This is what our community see, a concrete car park. It's not in a green environment. When we're talking about community wellbeing and resilience, I don't think this fits the bill. The petition that we have been working on has got over 1,200 resident signatures, and this is the current Innes ward and the new Innes ward, and is significantly less in size because of the concentration of population in the areas of St Albans, Edgware, Shirley and Richmond. This is the 10 Shirley Road site. From my point of view, the difference it would make to the community wellbeing and community resilience is, it's, you can't put a price on it as far as I'm concerned. And my question again, why are the communities around Shirley Road having to wait since 2012 for a new building to be built on 10 Shirley Road, and why has the council deferred funding this until 2030, 2031? So my last statement is, after reading this report on the South Library, I do not understand why the council would prioritise the repair rebuild of the South Library. The South Library is still in operation. The Shirley Community Centre was demolished. This proposal doesn't align with the council's policies on sustainability and environmental outcomes. There are suburbs across the city that are lacking community facilities. The current Shirley Library isn't fit for purpose and does not meet the needs of our growing population. In my view, the council should not direct staff to engage with renewals while existing rebuilds have not been completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Joanna? Tim?
Yeah, as the South Library Service Centre is up and running, did you know what its standard NBS it was before it was braced and what it is now?
No, I don't have enough information. I don't know enough about building reports to be able to tell you that off by hand.
Just to clarify, that's it. It is currently, or before the bracing, it was at 10%. At the moment, it's clawing, it's by the skin of its teeth at 34% NBS, and if it falls below that, it has to be closed. So that's one of the reasons.
That's why I put in the distance to Turanga, because from south it's only a small distance, whereas if anything happens to the Shirley Library, our closest library is Papanui Library or Turanga, and for the communities around those areas, we don't have the financial means to be able to come into town and then pay for parking, whereas a lot of these other community facilities have free parking associated to their libraries.
Thanks. Pauline?
A question for a follow-up with staff. Can we please get an updated NBS or engineering report on the Shirley Library as it is now? I'm finding this slide very difficult to read, and I think Joanna implied it could be quite an old information.
Yes.
So could we
that's
please
my
request
understanding.
that? Would be really good. Pardon?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Yanni?
Thank you, and I appreciate your submission. Do you think this is something that we should consult as part of our draft annual plan if we're going to, look at projects that are going to cost more money or change the timing or change what we do?
Yes, because a lot of the community don't read the papers unless they've got a specific interest in a topic, unless they're in touch with their council member. They don't know what's going on. A lot of people just assume that buildings are going to get repaired or rebuilt because of the earthquake and insurance payouts and all that kind of stuff. And so more information needs to come back to the residents, because unless you read the reports, and it's hard work reading all the reports and following along all the committee meetings and agendas, it takes a lot of time. And
right. And you, sorry, just to be clear, you made a submission to the draft annual plan.
Yes, I did.
Were you aware that the South Library budget was being moved forward by $4 million?
I wasn't, and I didn't realise it had almost doubled in costs as well. And that's when I saw the article. I was like, how is this a priority when it's got all the functions that we would love in our community and we don't have access to it? Our Kids Fest program is non-existent this school holidays.
So is it fair to say you would have made you would have said different things in the submission to the draft annual plan if you were aware that this was being considered?
We've just been basically waiting our turn. We thought once Hornby was done, we'd have an opportunity there. We've been basically told there's no money. Don't even bother asking the council to build a new facility because there's no money. Because of climate change and COVID issues, it's just not on budget, so don't ask.
It's in the long-term plan. It's in the plan.
We've added money in the long-term
It's
plan.
there.
Yeah, but it's so far away. It's like...
No, we can always bring that forward
Yeah,
once we've
and
done
that's
the
what
work.
I've been asking for the whole time.
But we have to be ready to do that.
Yeah, and that's my concern, is we just keep getting bumped out. The feasibility study a year on has had no progress, and it's like these communities are crying out. We're stuck in a small Shirley library. I don't even go to that library. I travel from a climate change point of view. I travel to Fendleton Library, which is over 7 kilometres away from where I live. And when I'm in town, I go to the South Library because it's got the park environment, it's got the free parking, it's got all the facilities and all the non-fiction books. We don't even have that. The kids have already said in their youth audit, we don't have what other libraries have, and it's not fair to call it a suburban library when it's not got the space and it's not got the facilities and functions that we should expect from a suburban library.
Okay. Are there any further questions? No? Aaron.
Thank you for a great and passionate and well put together presentation, Joanna. A question you might know from your assistant is have you done a breakdown of the usage per square metre? So the number of people going in for the building usage per square metre?
No, I haven't. But
it'll be an interesting number to know.
Yeah, it would be. We know it's...
you know what I mean, by
it's
the
the
size
second
versus the
busiest, and it's doubled as a community centre as well as our library. There is nothing else. There's no other facilities in this area, and so everybody is basically stuck in this small space. And the capacity, so-called capacity, is 200 people, and we already know there's well and truly more than 200 people using that facility on a day. Interesting thing about the report, it said only 30% in the South Library use the computers. And it's like that is the main thing that people go to the Shirley Library for, to have access to computers and Wi-Fi. And it's like we don't even have the space to be able to have those facilities available to our community. And it's just unjust from my point of view.
Okay, we've got
Brilliant.
one quick last question from Councillor Major online.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good, thanks.
That's very common sense what you're suggesting here. You are aware that the 30 where our old community centre is, or library is in Shirley,
Yep.
north of that, 30 houses have been sold by AMP.
Yes, I'm well aware of that.
I don't think we should lose sight of, and I'm not sure who's bought them, and I think that a bit of investigation needs to be done, that if it is a big company that's bought it and is going to redo the whole thing, we should offer our building that's there into the mix, and then get the money for it, but lease it back for 3 years, whatever, and use the money for, it wouldn't certainly build the Shirley Library, but it'll go a long way towards getting it underway. So at least we can, even if we use the same plans when we go ahead with the South Library, use the same plans and just orientate it different on the section. That's sort of got to say to you, Bob, as well, but I'm just throwing ideas out there at the moment.
Okay. So I didn't hear a question in that, but it's a useful comment.
And the community board is already thinking of all this stuff. Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, I have heard the community board. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on now. Thank you very much for coming along. Yeah. Okay, so right.